Hello, everyone. Happy to be here. So we're going to share a lot of information about more early childhood and some expectations as well as some practical tips. So not surprisingly, motor milestones tend to lag. There's delays in children with low vision, and particularly in children who are blind. This delay has a lot more due to the visual input and not receiving some of those motivational prompts of seeing something that excites them, that they want to interact with or locomote and move towards to be able to acquire that. In developmental fields that require no visual motor coordination, things like postural control or basic manipulation of an object, we tend to find that blind like young infants 9 to 12 months are not able to achieve the same level as what we find with sighted infants. So we really need to replace that visual motor coordination with an audio proprioceptive coordination. And this really has a lot to do with some of those cognitive prerequisites. So this allows the blind infants to replace the visual motor coordination with that audio proprioceptive prompts or coordination so that they can control their movements.
And so one of the populations that we study are children with CHARGE syndrome. CHARGE syndrome is the leading cause of deaf blindness in children. And this little girl here has pretty typical CHARGE features, and it affects many areas. So C stands for colobomas of the eye. H is heart defects. A is atresia, where the child's nasal passages don't open when they're born, so they have to have surgery. They have restricted growth, genital abnormalities, and ear abnormalities that often lead to being hard of hearing or deaf. And so CHARGE is the acronym. They have to have 4 of these 6 to be labeled with CHARGE syndrome. So we'll talk some about children with CHARGE syndrome, but a lot of our results can apply to children with deaf blindness and or multiple disabilities.
So here's some of our results that we have. We're just looking at typical motor milestones. This is from Parental Report. So the average age that the children that we were assessing with CHARGE syndrome versus typically developing sighted controls. So what we're finding is that there were delays across all of the milestones, starting as early as holding their head independently, and most notably as we move down the line with more locomotor activities like crawling, creeping, and walking. It can be delayed up to a couple of years. So just talking a little bit about walking, something that is easily taken for granted, but it's a very complex task. So you have to be able to support the body in upright stance. You have to be able to balance while also having shifts. So going from double stance where you have more balance to single stance from one foot to the next foot. So it tends to be quite complicated. So children with visual impairments have been found to be about 6 months or more delayed. So in an older study that we conducted, we found about a 6-month delay, and similar studies have found a similar delay. But with children with CHARGE syndrome, which is much more complex, we can find that the delays can be up to several years. So we were looking at just basic balance, and we looked at a variety of different types of balance. We had a group of children, average age was about 9, and we found that their average age of walking was around 42 months in comparison to our control group, which was about 13 months. We wanted to look at some other things like how often for those that are independently walking, how often are they falling? So not falling because they're doing kind of bigger activities, but they just are losing their balance for an unknown reason. And how many had a fear of falling? So 14 of those children had a fear of falling, and 9 of them used some type of mobility aid. So the score that we used was the pediatric balance scale, and we found that about half of them were at risk for falling. So again, not because they're participating in some type of sport or activity, but just falling during typical types of activities. And we found, oh, go ahead. And we also found that their scores were related to their scores were related to their perceptions. So their ABC scores are more of their perceptions. All right, so then we looked more into independent walking. And so we wanted to see what types of balance scores related to how they were able to walk or when they were walking and how well they were walking. So there's a variety of different types of balance that we looked at. We looked at an anticipatory, reactive, sensory, and dynamic. So anticipatory is when you're taking a step or you're comparing right leg versus left leg. Reactive is when you're reacting to an unexpected change in the environment. So for example, if someone is pushing you a little bit and you're reacting to that with a change in your balance. Sensory, so different sensory inputs. So standing on something that is slanted, so it's giving that different proprioceptive information. If they have some vision, which all the charged children had at least low vision, so taking away some of that vision, so a variety of different sensory changes, and then dynamic is gait assessments. So what we found was, for one, we were also looking at their activity levels. They tended to participate in very little activities, both at home and at school, so they had a very low overall activity score. But we wanted to see how the relationship between their physical activity levels with their overall balance and motor skills. So we looked at associations between each of those, and what we found was that balance and motor skills were correlated. However, there was no, or a very weak relationship between their balance. If you could click that on that, Lauren, their balance with the physical activity as well as with their motor skills with their physical activity. All right, so then we really wanted to see, okay, what was most important. So we found that balance, especially anticipatory control, which seems to be more the lower level types of balance. So the very basic types of balance, so standing on 2 feet, you're not anticipating any changes. And that was really the most important, had the biggest role in their fundamental motor skills. So just developing that very basic sense of balance. So we also looked at locomotor affordances. So we wanted to see what kinds of activities really affected and influenced how they were moving and growing and acquiring motor skills. So just to kind of give a basic, infants tend to acquire motor milestones as they're growing. So they're constantly changing, constantly having to adapt to a changing body. So they're growing, they're increasing strength, they're getting more coordinated, less coordinated, they're going through a lot of different changes. So it's a continual adaptation. So the environmental affordances need to then also change with some of those changes. So you're trying to figure out what kinds of equipment, what kinds of environment, what kind of flooring is going to be best suited to help a child to develop and grow. So this is a chart. We didn't develop this chart, but this is just a chart looking at gross motor changes for children with low vision. So you find this for any child. It might be delayed a bit more for children with low vision, but it's just your typical chart. Just one thing to note again, with children with low vision, they tend to do their locomotor skills or tend to be the most delayed. So it's that stimulation that really kind of sets them back a bit. So some start walking without ever going through a crawling period. Really, any child could end up skipping, crawling, or creeping. So the difference between crawling and creeping is the belly is off the floor. Crawling is more like a military crawl. So, but it is important to try to encourage that if possible. It gives abdominal strength going through those crawling stages, that hip rotation. A lot of infants who are blind or low vision tend to do like a 5-point crawl where they have their head, might be giving them some more proprioceptive information by touching the ground and using it as another point of support. Some of them will do more like a bunny hop where their back feet are coming together instead of getting that alternating movement pattern, but that is good practice for later independent walking. All right. And then to just give a comparison, we also have a fine motor chart for children with low vision as well. Just due to time, I'm not going to go through that one. All right. So infants who are at risk, just it's important to always kind of assess where they're at, see how far they're behind, what kinds of activities they're able to do, and see, try to make some changes and give them a different environment, encourage them to go through these different stages, encouraging that, giving them as many opportunities as possible. So keeping in mind that neuroplasticity is maximal during infancy, so you're going to get the biggest growth and potential during that period. So that's why early intervention is always so important. So some key points, thinking about, should you do an intervention? What types of interventions you should be doing? What kinds of things you want to accomplish? What are your goals? What team is working on that? Identifying important outcomes. So how are you doing those assessments? Who is doing those assessments? What kinds of tools you have? So just keeping in mind, there's a lot that goes into that. So thinking about the team that is trying to make those types of decisions. So to talk a little bit more about some of the practical side of things, I just wanted to throw up Newell's model of constraints. So always thinking about the individual first, so what they're capable of. So structural is more like the physical. So, you know, what kinds of, what limitations or what expectations do you have of them? What can they do? So what can motivate them? So functionally, so what do they know about a skill or a movement pattern? Are you doing any things that are motivating them? And then the task constraints, think about those different equipment modifications that we've been hearing about in the last couple of talks. So how can you modify the task or the rules or the goals? And as well as placing them in different types of environments. So again, even just the flooring, a smoother floor versus carpeting can really change the likelihood if an infant is going to be crawling or walking, or how long they're going to be crawling or walking. So if it's hard on their knees, for example, they might be less likely to crawl. All right, so this one requires a lot of clicking. All right. So I just wanted to run through with Newell's model an example with a child with visual impairments. So that would be part of the structural constraints of that individual. So, and if they have any additional disabilities, that would also be part of some of those structural, some could be cognitive or psychological as well, which would be functional. Also thinking about things like their experience. And then moving on to the environment, some different factors to keep in mind. So I'm sure we're all familiar with a lot of parents that tend to shield their child. They tend to protect them as opposed to giving them many more opportunities. And so that can really limit some of their future potential. So again, early opportunities are really, really important. Limited motor development knowledge, which could be on the part of teachers, PE teachers, it could be on the part of anyone on the team, and limited opportunities. So then the task, providing appropriate equipment, giving them appropriate instructional strategies, maybe giving them some more time, so teaching them in some different ways, and altering the overall activities. All right, so we've also looked at more the home environment in young children with and without charge, 18 to 42 months. We wanted to really see some of those affordances in with those kids and see if there's any differences with parents that have children with severe disabilities versus those that do not. So some of the things that we found for affordances in the home. So outdoor or outside space is really important. Do they have a place to play? Do they have outside toys? Are there balls in the environment? Are there things that are encouraging them to move? As well as inside space. So are the toys and activities that they have encouraging more sedentary behaviors? Are they doing more sitting? Or are they doing more activities that are encouraging them to move around? Providing them with a variety of stimulation. So maybe it's different colors, maybe it's different textures, maybe it's different sizes, and having a variety of both fine motor toys. So some of those smaller toys that encourage manipulation versus some of those bigger toys, such as balls or playground equipment that encourage them to do bigger movements. So what we found were participants with charge acquired their motor skills much later. So as we found in our other studies, so not surprising there. But as far as differences with the home environments, we really only saw differences with the outside space. So interestingly, the parents with children without disabilities tended to offer more outside opportunities than what we found with the parents with children of charge syndrome. So keep in mind, most of these parents had multiple children. So it wasn't just they had just one child in the house. So of course that impacts the kinds of things and objects that they have in the house and opportunities. But again, age of walking, we wanted to see how it was associated. And so age of walking for children with charge was positively correlated with outside space, fine motor toys, and gross motor toys. So then their total overall score. So really just thinking the more opportunities that you're giving the kids, it's going to most likely promote their independent walking and gross motor skills. All right, so this just gives kind of some good early indications of some of those benefits of providing as many different opportunities as possible and equipment and activities. So we also, part of this was we looked at their interactions and found that the parents with children with charge syndrome tended to be very, very involved. It may also be the people that are participating in these studies tend to be, a little different and maybe more involved than parents that might not participate. So there's always that factor. But we did find that the parental influence, family support, encouragement, guidance, a lot of them were assessing their kids with how they were doing, if they were looking for different opportunities to get them involved and encouraging them. So that those are all important aspects as well. All right, I'm going to switch gears over to Lauren.
So now we're just going to be talking a little bit about the variables and ways to apply what Pam was talking about. And we're going to be talking about using constraints to design developmentally appropriate movement activities. And hang on, because we have lots and lots of resources. But basically, luckily in our country, we have a lot of equipment companies that sell bright colored balls, bell balls, and even like pet stores, you can get lots of balls with bells and whistles on them, literally. And then as Pam was talking about non-slip surfaces, also like what Marty and Melissa were talking about, and Lisa, instructional strategies, and of course, a rich environment with parental involvement and lots of social interaction. So this is just some of the equipment that would be helpful to improve the environment and improve kids' movement and their ability to do basic fundamental skills, like these blocks on the left. This is a ball through the American Printing House for the Blind, this black and yellow one. And then this bottom left is a beeping ball through the American Printing House for the Blind. But we do have a lot more companies now that do sell bell balls and beeping balls, but focusing on textures, sounds, and encouraging the kids to move. So some more instructional strategies, as Pam kind of touched on this, like putting kids on their stomach and showing them what's available there. If they can't see it, I often put it in their hands and let them feel it, and then clap or make the sound where it is and have them move to it, or put them on a scooter board and have them move to it. Anything to help them with movement. Sometimes people will do a walking toy that helps them, like a little cart that help them walk. And again, placing them on the floor and encouraging them to crawl. And then just different ways to promote their ability to see colors, like contrasting a ball or a piece of equipment against the background. Again, here, like a wheelbarrow, and showing them how they can walk. And a lot of times we do have to use physical assistance, and that's fine. And I think that it's important to remember that most kids start off with some physical assistance. So what works? So we found, and this is a great picture of Pam with her daughter walking in an environment of supportive water. So we don't want to let them fall, but try to take one hand away, or just put your hand there and let them grab onto it. Say, my hand's right here, and show them where your hand is so that they can continue to walk and feel comfortable. Encourage them. Sometimes I'll even place them next to a wall where they can walk or run and then touch the wall if they need to, or a guide wire, which we'll talk about too. And then just encouraging walking, because walking is the foundation of everything else. So here's walking with a little car, little toy car, and you can actually place a folded towel, like supporting them, but not really holding on to them. You can actually hold a broom or a hockey stick and have them hold on to that. You can have them cruise from chair to chair, walking to you, just like you have them walk from person to person. And so I'm going to show you a link to our website. It's campabilities.org. As we mentioned, I coordinated Campabilities. It's a sports camp for children with visual impairments. And these are just some balance activities for kids, any kids. You could use it for kids with multiple disabilities. These are some balance boards. As you can see, there's these balancing stones. So I'm just showing different balancing. Here's just on a kickboard and trying to bat bubbles. If they have some vision, they can see the bubbles.
To increase difficulty, try reaching.
Doing some group activities, challenging the kids with group activities. So this is called it's called Got Balance video. And we even have the kids on like a therapy ball, reaching and challenging their balance. So I just want to share some great resources with you. This is all free, and all of these are on our website. This is called the Gross Motor Development Curriculum. And this is a free download. I'm going to show you how to get to our website. It's called campabilities.org. And if you go to the website, you can go to what's called instructional materials right here. And under instructional materials, you'll see we have videos for every sport. So I know Marty was talking about, you have teachers teaching with traditional rules, but if you have the opportunity to see these videos on baseball here, volleyball, tennis, all the variables you would need to teach kids with visual impairment or deaf blindness. Here's soccer, basketball, track and field, cross-country running, swimming, wrestling. And then here's the balance video that I was just showing you. Here's a whole video on gross motor development. How do you teach kids skipping, sliding, leaping, jumping, throwing? And then this one is just for kids with multiple disabilities. It's kids with Charge syndrome, all doing their basic foundational motor skills, such as kicking, throwing, batting, sliding. And then I just want to share, this is our newest one, and this is a video about, let me see if I can make it bigger.
My name is Dr. Lauren Lieberman. Thank you for watching this video series on how to teach children with visual impairments and additional disabilities. We want to thank the Lavelle Fund for the Blind, Campabilities, and the Institute.
So this is for kids with more multiple disabilities. And how do you do all the foundational skills? Kind of overlaps a little bit with what Melissa was talking about.
Physical assistance. Many children will need partial or total physical assistance to execute a skill. This is an excellent method of teaching children to learn a novel skill or activity.
So just talking about teaching skills, and then it goes on into the specific locomotor and object
skipping.
control skills.
Students can hop, gallop, or skip using similar techniques as running, utilizing a guide wire, a tether, a human guide, or
So
circular.
using physical assistance,
They can
using a
also
wall.
execute these activities in other ways. They can move next to a wall for security or touch the wall for physical support.
I'm just going to move you through it just to show you a few of the skills, but this is all free and all something you can access at any time.
Other options include throwing a ball hanging from a string. They can even throw balloons, beanbags, yarn balls, or balls of different sizes. Kicking. The student can kick from a sitting position. They can kick.
So again, I mean, if we had more time, I'd show you more of this video, but that's one of your options. We also have a video just on swimming for kids with more multiple disabilities. We have outdoor adventure videos, paddleboarding, rock climbing, kayaking, fishing, biking, and hiking. And all these are specific to kids with visual impairments or deaf blindness. All these are free books. You can download these and they're all free books related to kids with visual impairments or deaf blindness. And then here's all these tip sheets to help you. And it's all like running strategies, locomotor skills, object control. And then these are tip sheets related to multiple disabilities like Charge syndrome, cortical visual impairment, cerebral palsy, and visual impairment, Down syndrome. So please take advantage of these. They're free and they're all from a grant that we got. Okay. And so again, this book is the one, the gross motor development curriculum is the one that I was just showing you in this PowerPoint here. And so again, our websites, we have the American Printing House for the Blind. A lot of that equipment I showed you, like the beeping balls, they have a running kit to help with running. So that's APH. And then we have campabilities.org under instructional materials or Lavelle resources. And also the Perkins School for the Blind has awesome physical education teachers and wonderful physical education resources on their website. And lastly, I just want to encourage everybody on this call, if you have children with visual impairments that you work with and you want a way to showcase all the different sports and physical activities that they can learn, Camp Abilities is a sports camp for children with visual impairments. We started Camp Abilities in Brockport in 1996, and now we have Camp Abilities all over the world, and we have a manual that will help you start the camp. We teach motor skills, balance, sports skills, recreation, and skills for life. It's a wonderful program. This will be our 28th year of Camp Abilities. And again, like we've helped people start Camp Abilities in other countries. And I would be happy to come to whatever camp you run and help you start your camp if you'd like. So that's this is our websites here. And thank you for your attention. And if anybody would like our contact information, I can put our emails in the chat. But now we have a few minutes